This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
I'm sure we've all heard it before. Nostalgia, nostalgia goggles, rose-tinted glasses, whatever you want to call it, are some of the most common terms thrown around in gaming whenever talking about games generally from the 6th generation and lower. And it's mainly used as a defense from people who can't actually break down reasons as to why they think a game is bad, so instead they'll use the nostalgia bias trump card to try and devalue somebody's opinion for thinking an older game might be better than what we have today. Because, you know, there's no way older games can be good on their own merits. No, if you think an old game is good, it's simply because of nostalgia. And if you're Nintendo, I mean, you're just kind of out of luck. For them, they're kind of a rare case because they get both ends of the spectrum. If you think Ocarina of Time or A Link to the Past is the best, that's nostalgia. But then at the same time, let's say reviewers give high praises to the newest game in the series like Mario Odyssey or Zelda Breath of the Wild, that's apparently nostalgia too because they played the games in those series as a child or something, so now those games automatically review better or something. Even if your game pretty much ditches all design philosophy set by earlier installments, it won't matter to these people because it has the same familiar characters. If Nintendo ever decides to make some type of Kirby RPG, and why they haven't yet, I have no idea. But if you so happen to like that game, it's simply because you have history with the characters and you can't keep it real about the quality of the game. Yes, it's dumb. One final thing on this whole Nintendo situation, I don't see how nostalgia could be said about them, of all people, or developers. I personally have zero nostalgia for them, for the simple fact that so many of their franchises that exist today have been so in your face over these past few years. Something like Crash Bandicoot, where it was a character we haven't seen in years, being brought back with a new coat of paint, going through the same exact levels and track designs as before, sure. But Mario? At the time of Mario Odyssey's release, we had like 8 Mario games within that same year. But so many people thought the glowing praise of Mario Odyssey was just because of nostalgia, even though that character has always been around. Anyways, getting off topic here, let's get back to the main point. The notion that older games are better because of nostalgic purposes is just stupid. Some people think that if somebody says they prefer an older game, it's because they played that game as a kid, therefore they have some type of emotional attachment to the game, so they can't look at it more critically. You know, I can think of all the gaming classics that I played as a kid that just really take me back thinking about them. Paperboy 64, I mean, just look at this game right now. Visually stunning, truly ahead of its time. Who knew delivering paper could be so much fun with these buttery, smooth controls and that killer soundtrack? And don't even get me started on that master stroke of a game, Rugrats in Paris. Thank you, Mom. Where would I be without that game? Now, maybe this argument would make sense if we lived in a society where you're only allowed to go back and experience games that you once played as a kid and not the other thousands upon thousands of games that we missed out on at the time or came out before it. But newsflash, we don't. Whenever there's a dry spell in the year where the upcoming releases for the month don't really interest me, I tend to go back to older consoles to see what I missed out on that I can go back and play while I wait for a new game that piques my interest to release. And frequently I'll get thoughts like, why is the storytelling so much better in this series than what we're getting now? Oh my god, these JRPGs, they're incredible. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Why does a stealth game that came out in 2002 feel so much better and more fun than stealth games that came out over a decade after it? But of course, whenever I praise these games, I'm always met with people that say you only like these games because they are old. Just look at Ratchet & Clank 2016. Prior to that game's release, I wanted to do an analysis of both the original and remake to give my thoughts on how they compare to each other. That didn't end up happening because I'm lazy, didn't want to take the time to do it, so I made a thread on Twitter on how I thought the remake was inferior in almost all areas. From the funky soundtrack of the original being replaced by generic cinematic garbage, to the frame rate being 60 frames compared to 30 frames now, how despite being a hot-headed do what I want type of character, really just the best type of characters if I'm being honest, with a lot of development between him and Clank to just being a happy-go-lucky save the world type of character now with very little development, if any. Not to mention that the game is called Ratchet and Clank and they barely ever talk to each other, to the way the characters animated in the cutscenes that really showed their intentions and the type of personalities that each of them had, versus the flapping of the mouths and awkwardly just moving their eyebrows and arms. The jokes being more Metroidvania-like, you get the point. All my points were thrown out of the window simply because the original game came out on PlayStation 2, and because the PlayStation 4 game is shiny, newer, and prettier, it's somehow objectively better. This is the dangerous way to look at video games and can only hurt a franchise in the long run. Comparing and contrasting is something that should take place when talking about or reviewing a game within a certain series to show where certain aspects of older games may have either been improved upon or where the newest installment may have missed what made the original game so great to begin with that drew people to that franchise. Paper Mario, I'm looking at you, please. Zelda Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game, and I think it's an open world masterpiece. It's one of the few open world games that I own and I actually completed. But when Zelda fans who think older Zelda games were better because they had a bigger focus on music, some of the most hummable and whistleable tunes in all of gaming, the stories were more straightforward and in your face versus the find it on your own type of deal, and that it was a shame that the elemental dungeons got replaced by divine beasts and shrines because dungeons were a big part of what made Zelda, I don't really go after these guys and start making stupid statements like, you only like those games because you were a kid, and that those aspects were aspects that ruined the series for years, get with the times, and all this other babble. I think it's something that should be discussed. But oh no, we can't look at older games to study them and see what made people fall in love with them in the first place. I mean, there's no way older games could contribute to anything modern games have to offer. The only people that think that are nostalgia babies. You know, I think it really says something when almost 2 decades later, despite all the criticisms, a lot of which were just people looking for anything to complain about to devalue what these games mean to people that liked it, that Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are still the most talked about games within that series. Every other game will come and go, but the Sonic Adventure games always find themselves back into the conversation, and for good reasons. Gameplay you can actually, control. The killer soundtracks, stories that didn't feel like they were insulting your intelligence and didn't lean too much on the goofy side, telling stupid one-liners, or too much on the serious side while not even being serious but trying to be serious and still telling stupid one-liners. Just overall, the amount of content that they had from multiplayer, encouraging replay value with Child Garden, kart racing, and so on. But, I get it. This is just me looking at the games through my kiddie nostalgia blinded eyes. Content, full control of your characters, better directed cutscenes. Alright, buddy. Let's bring it back to reality. You've clearly just gone insane just now asking for all those things in your video game. A AAA budget. Look at this guy. Bottom line, unless somebody actually says they like something for nostalgic purposes, at least try to hear out why they might feel the way they do about a game before activating the nostalgia bias trump card. Maybe the person in question really just doesn't care that the game looks worse than what we have on these current gen consoles. Maybe they think something like tank controls is a non-issue. God knows Sin and Punishment had some of the most bizarre controls I've ever used in a game, but despite all that, and despite being one of the last games on the Nintendo 64, I'd put it as one of the top 10 new games that I played in 2018. And yes, for someone like me, there's stuff I used to like back in the day that I don't think hold up all that well now. I don't think everything from the past is better just because it's from the past. But at the same time, there are games and genres that I couldn't stand back in the day, like RPGs, literally NyQuil in gaming form at the time, but are now some of my favorite games to play now that I have a different mindset. That's really all I gotta say. Tried ending the video with a more meaningful conclusion. Tried, didn't work out. So I'm just gonna put a hard stop right here and just end it. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Have a good one.